Maya had always thought her great-aunt was a bit odd. The old woman lived alone in that big house in Salem, surrounded by dusty books and strange collectibles. Maya visited only twice as a child, and both times the house felt heavy, like it was holding secrets in every corner. When the phone call came that October morning, Maya was sitting in her tiny Boston apartment, struggling to pay rent on her graphic design business. Her great-aunt had passed away peacefully in her sleep at age 89. The funeral was small, just a few neighbors and distant relatives Maya barely knew. Then came the bigger surprise. The lawyer, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses, handed Maya a thick envelope. Inside was the deed to the Victorian house on Chestnut Street, along with a handwritten note that made her stomach flutter with unease. "She means no harm, dear. She's just looking for someone who understands." The note read in her great-aunt's shaky handwriting. Maya stared at the words, turning the paper over and over. What did that even mean? Who was she? Her great-aunt had lived alone for decades. Maya folded the note and stuffed it in her purse, deciding it was probably just the ramblings of an elderly woman. The house sat on one of Salem's most historic streets. Built in 1887 when the city was still recovering from its infamous past. 3 stories tall with dark wooden shutters and a wraparound porch. It looked exactly like the kind of place tourists would photograph during Halloween season. Maya stood on the sidewalk that first day, keys heavy in her hand. The house loomed above her, windows dark and unwelcoming. The yard was overgrown, leaves scattered across the front steps. She took a deep breath and climbed the creaky porch stairs. Inside, the house smelled of old wood and something else she couldn't quite place. Lavender, maybe, mixed with the musty scent of closed rooms. Every surface was covered with her great-aunt's belongings, crystal figurines, old photographs, stacks of books that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. The living room was dominated by a massive stone fireplace, its mantel crowded with antique clocks. Maya counted 7 of them, all stopped at different times. The silence was so complete it felt alive. Pressing against her ears, she spent the first week going through boxes, finding treasures and junk mixed together. Her great-aunt had saved everything, old letters, newspaper clippings, even grocery lists from the 1980s. But the most surprising discovery was a stack of leather-bound journals, dozens of them, stored in a wooden chest in the study. Maya opened the first one, dated 40 years ago. The pages were filled with her great-aunt's neat handwriting, documenting daily life in the house. Normal stuff at first, weather, visitors, household repairs. But as Maya read deeper, she found strange entries that made her skin crawl. She appeared again last night, standing in the doorway, same white dress, same sad expression. I tried to speak to her, but she just stared at my bed and walked away. The cold spot in the hallway is getting stronger. Mrs. Henderson next door says she's never felt anything like it. I found the bedroom door open again this morning. I know I locked it before going to sleep. She's getting more active. Maya slammed the journal shut, her heart racing. These had to be the writings of a lonely old woman, creating stories to fill her empty days. There was no way her practical great-aunt actually believed in ghosts. But as she continued cleaning the house, small things began to bother her. Doors she remembered closing would be standing open. The temperature would suddenly drop in certain rooms for no reason. Objects would be moved slightly from where she'd left them. Maya told herself it was just the house settling, old wood expanding and contracting. The doors probably didn't latch properly. The heating system was ancient and unreliable. There had to be logical explanations for everything. She decided to take the master bedroom on the 2nd floor, the largest room in the house. It faced the street and got good morning light. Her great-aunt had clearly spent a lot of time there. The walls were covered with family photos and the furniture was polished to a shine. The bed was enormous, a 4-poster antique that probably weighed more than her car. Maya replaced the old bedding with her own things, trying to make the space feel more personal. She hung her art prints on the walls and set up her laptop on the antique writing desk by the window. For the first few nights, Maya slept better than she had in months. The house was quiet, the bed comfortable. She started to think maybe inheriting this place was exactly what she needed. She could work from home, save money, maybe even start taking on bigger design projects. But on the fourth night, something changed. Maya woke up suddenly. That jarring awakening that happens when your brain senses something wrong. The room was darker than usual, even though the street light outside should have been casting shadows through the curtains. She lay still, listening. The house was completely silent, but somehow the silence felt different, heavier, like someone was holding their breath. Maya reached for her phone to check the time, but her hand froze halfway to the nightstand. There, in the doorway to the hall, stood the outline of a woman. The figure was translucent, like looking through frosted glass. Maya could make out the shape of a long dress, hair pinned up in an old-fashioned style. The woman seemed to be looking directly at her, though Maya couldn't make out her face clearly. Every logical part of Maya's brain screamed that this couldn't be real. She was dreaming, or maybe the stress of moving had finally gotten to her. But the figure felt completely solid, completely present. Maya could even sense a personality behind it, curious, gentle, maybe a little sad. The woman began to move forward, her steps making no sound on the wooden floor. Maya watched, paralyzed, as the figure approached the foot of the bed. But then something strange happened. The woman stopped, as if she'd hit an invisible wall. She tried to move closer, reaching out with one translucent hand, but she couldn't seem to cross some unseen boundary. For several long minutes, the figure stood there, swaying slightly, before slowly backing away and disappearing through the bedroom wall. Maya lay awake until dawn, staring at the spot where the woman had vanished. When morning light finally filled the room, she almost convinced herself it had been a dream. But deep down, she knew better. She'd seen something impossible, something that would change everything about her quiet new life in Salem. The note from her great-aunt suddenly made perfect sense. She means no harm, dear. She's just looking for someone who understands. Maya was beginning to understand that she wasn't alone in the house, and somehow that didn't frighten her as much as it should have. 3 weeks had passed since Maya first saw the woman in white. She tried to convince herself it was just a dream, a trick of her tired mind adjusting to the new house. But every night, she found herself lying awake, waiting and watching the doorway. The house had settled into a routine around her. Maya worked during the day, designing logos and websites for her clients. She'd set up her office in the sunny front room, where the morning light made everything feel normal and safe. But as evening approached, the atmosphere would shift. The shadows grew longer, the silence deeper. Maya started keeping a notebook by her bed, just like her great-aunt had done. At first, there wasn't much to write. A door creaking at 2 a.m. The feeling of being watched while brushing her teeth. Small things that could easily be explained away. But on November 15th, everything changed. Maya had gone to bed early that night, exhausted from a long day of client revisions. She'd been sleeping deeply when something pulled her from her dreams. Not a sound, but a presence. That same heavy feeling she'd experienced weeks before. She opened her eyes slowly, afraid of what she might see. The room was bathed in soft moonlight from the window, casting familiar shadows across the wooden floor. At first, everything looked normal. Then she saw her. The woman stood in the doorway again, but this time she was much clearer. Maya could make out details she'd missed before. The woman looked young, maybe in her early 20s. Her hair was styled in finger waves, the kind Maya had seen in old photographs from the 1920s. Her dress was simple but elegant, white cotton, with delicate embroidery round the neckline. But it was her face that caught Maya's attention. The woman wasn't frightening at all. She looked curious, almost hopeful. Her eyes were fixed on Maya with an intensity that felt almost human. Maya's first instinct was to hide under the covers, to pretend this wasn't happening. But something about the woman's expression stopped her. She looked so real, so present. And more importantly, she looked lonely. "Hello," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet room. The woman's eyes widened slightly, as if she was surprised to be acknowledged. She took a step forward, her movements graceful and silent. Maya noticed she didn't quite touch the floor when she walked, hovering just slightly above the old wooden board's dot as the woman approached. Maya felt a strange calm wash over her. This wasn't like the scary movies she'd watched growing up. There was no cold wind, no flickering lights, no sense of danger. Just this quiet, sad presence moving toward her bed. The woman reached the foot of the bed and stopped. She extended her hand, as if trying to touch the wooden footboard. But her fingers passed right through it. She tried again, pressing forward. But something invisible seemed to hold her back. Maya sat up slowly, pulling her blanket around her shoulders. "What do you want?" she asked softly. The woman looked directly at her, and Maya saw tears glistening in her translucent eyes. She pointed toward the bed, then toward herself, then shook her head in frustration. She was trying to communicate something, but Maya couldn't understand what. For the next 10 minutes, Maya watched as the woman attempted to cross some invisible barrier at the foot of the bed. She would lean forward, reaching out with both hands, but she couldn't seem to get any closer. It was like watching someone press against a glass wall that Maya couldn't see. The woman's frustration was growing. She paced back and forth at the foot of the bed, her dress swishing silently as she moved. Sometimes she would point at Maya, then at the bed, then at herself. Other times she would clasp her hands together as if pleading. Maya found herself leaning forward, trying to help. "Somehow, I don't understand," she said. "What are you trying to tell me?" The woman stopped pacing and looked directly at Maya. For a moment, their eyes met across the impossible distance between the living and the dead. Maya felt a connection, a recognition that went beyond words. This woman had been here for a long time, waiting for someone who would see her, who would listen. Then, as suddenly as she'd appeared, the woman stepped backward. She didn't turn around like a normal person would. Instead, she moved in reverse, her eyes never leaving Maya's face. She backed through the bedroom wall and disappeared, leaving Maya alone with her racing heart and 1,000 questions. Maya grabbed her notebook and started writing everything down. The woman's appearance, her movements, the way she'd tried to cross to the bed. She drew sketches of the dress, the hairstyle, the desperate expression on the woman's face. As she wrote, Maya realized something important. The woman wasn't trying to scare her. She was trying to reach her. There was something about the bed, something that kept her from getting close. And for some reason, she needed Maya to understand. The next morning, Maya called in sick to work. She couldn't focus on designing websites when her mind was full of questions about her midnight visitor. She spent the day in the basement, going through more of her great aunt's belongings. That's when she found the box labeled Eleanor's things in her great aunt's careful handwriting. Inside were old photographs, letters, and a small silver locket. Maya opened the locket and gasped. The face inside looked exactly like the woman she'd seen. The photograph was old, maybe from the 1920s. A young woman with the same finger-waved hair, the same hopeful expression. On the back, someone had written Eleanor Whitmore, 1923. Maya sat on the basement floor, holding the locket and staring at the photograph. Eleanor. That was her name. She wasn't just a ghost or a figment of Maya's imagination. She was a real person who had lived in this house, who had died in this house. But why couldn't she cross to the bed? What was keeping her trapped at that invisible barrier? And more importantly, what did she want from Maya? That night, Maya waited. She kept the locket on her nightstand and her notebook ready. She had so many questions. And somehow, she knew Eleanor would be back. The woman in white wasn't just haunting the house. She was trying to tell Maya something important. When Eleanor appeared again at 3:17 a.m., Maya was ready. This time, she wasn't afraid. She was determined to understand what this lonely spirit needed, and why she'd been waiting so long for someone to help her. The real conversation was about to begin. Maya couldn't sleep after finding Eleanor's photograph. She spent the rest of the night sitting at her kitchen table, staring at the locket and trying to piece together what she knew. A young woman had died in this house in 1923, and somehow, her spirit was still here, unable to cross to the bed where Maya now slept. The next morning, Maya drove straight to the Salem Historical Society. The building was a converted mansion from the 1800s, its rooms filled with dusty displays and towering bookshelves. Behind the reception desk sat an elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes. "I'm looking for information about my house," Maya said, placing the locket on the counter. "Specifically about someone named Eleanor Whitmore who lived there in 1923. The woman's eyes widened when she saw the photograph. "Oh my, you must be living in the old Whitmore place on Chestnut Street. I'm Mrs. Patterson, the head librarian here. We get questions about that house quite often, especially around Halloween." Mrs. Patterson led Maya to a back room filled with filing cabinets and old record books. "The Whitmore family built that house in 1887, she explained, pulling out a thick folder. "They were quite wealthy, made their fortune in shipping. Eleanor was their only daughter, born in 1901. Maya opened the folder and found herself looking at newspaper clippings, family photographs, and official records. Eleanor had been a vibrant young woman, active in the local arts community. She taught piano lessons to children and organized charity events for the church. She was engaged to be married," Mrs. Patterson continued, pointing to a social announcement from 1922. "A young man named James Mitchell. He was studying to be a doctor, came from a good family. They planned to marry in the spring of 1924. Maya studied the engagement photo. Eleanor looked radiant, her arm linked with a handsome young man in a suit. They both looked so happy, so full of life and plans for the future. What happened to her?" Maya asked, though she already suspected the answer wouldn't be pleasant. Mrs. Patterson's expression grew somber. "The Spanish flu pandemic hit Salem hard in 1923. Many young people died that winter. Eleanor caught it in February and passed away within a week. She was only 22 years old." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Eleanor had died young, just when her life was beginning. No wonder she seemed so lost, so desperate to communicate. "Something important? Did she die in the house?" "Yes, in the master bedroom upstairs. It was common then for people to die at home, surrounded by family. Her parents were devastated. They moved away shortly after and never returned to Salem." Maya spent the rest of the day reading through the historical records. She learned that the house had changed hands many times over the years. Most families didn't stay long, usually selling within a few years. The reasons varied, but Maya noticed a pattern in the real estate records: atmospheric disturbances, unexplained phenomena. Family felt uncomfortable. When she got home that evening, Maya went straight to her great-aunt's journals. Now that she knew Eleanor's story, the entries made much more sense. Her great-aunt had been the longest resident of the house, living there for nearly 50 years. She documented Eleanor's appearances with scientific precision. "Eleanor always appears between 3 and 4 a.m. One entry read, "She wears the same white nightgown, the one she died in. She seems drawn to the bedroom but cannot enter fully. I believe she's trapped by something unfinished." Another entry, dated 15 years later, "I tried speaking to Eleanor tonight. She pointed to the bed, then to herself, then shook her head. I think she's trying to tell me something about where she died. Perhaps she cannot rest because she never had the chance to live her life fully." Maya found dozens of similar entries, each one building a picture of Eleanor's behavior over the decades. She always followed the same pattern, appearing in the doorway, attempting to approach the bed, failing to cross some invisible threshold, then retreating through the wall. The most interesting discovery came in a journal from just 2 years ago. Her great-aunt had written, "I found something today that might explain Eleanor's restlessness." Hidden in the secret compartment of the bedroom dresser was a small velvet box. Inside was Eleanor's engagement ring, along with a letter that was never delivered. Maya's heart raced. She ran upstairs to the bedroom and began examining the antique dresser. It took her nearly an hour to find the hidden compartment, a small panel that slid out from the back of the bottom drawer. Inside was exactly what her great-aunt had described, a small velvet box and a yellowed envelope. Maya's hands trembled. As she opened the box, the ring was beautiful, a simple gold band with a small diamond. Inside the band was engraved, Until we meet again, James. The letter was addressed to Eleanor in elegant handwriting. The return address showed it was from James Mitchell, but it was postmarked 3 days after Eleanor's death. Maya carefully unfolded the brittle paper and began to read. My dearest Eleanor, the letter began, I received word of your illness, and am desperate to come to you, but I am trapped here in Boston by my own case of the flu. The doctors say I will recover, but I fear I may not reach you in time. Please know that you are the light of my life, and I will love you beyond death itself. The letter went on to describe James's plans for their future together, his dreams of the life they would build, his promise to love her always. It was heartbreaking to read, knowing that Eleanor had died never knowing how much she was loved. Maya sat on the bedroom floor, holding the letter and the ring. Suddenly, Eleanor's behavior made perfect sense. She wasn't trying to frighten anyone or cause trouble. She was searching for this letter, for proof that James had loved her. She'd been waiting in this house for 100 years, unable to rest because she'd never received his final message. That night, Maya placed the ring and letter on her nightstand and waited. When Eleanor appeared at 3:17 a.m., Maya was ready. I found them, Maya said softly, holding up the ring and letter. I found what you were looking for. Eleanor's expression changed completely. The sadness lifted from her face, replaced by something like hope. She moved forward eagerly, reaching for the items, but still couldn't cross the invisible barrier. Maya realized then that Eleanor wasn't just looking for the letter. She needed someone to help her understand it, to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Eleanor had been waiting for someone who would care enough to solve her mystery. He loved you, Maya said, opening the letter. James loved you so much. He was sick too, but he tried to reach you. This letter came too late, but his love was real. Eleanor's form shimmered as tears ran down her translucent cheeks. She pressed her hands against the invisible barrier, desperate to reach the proof of James's love. Maya understood now what she needed to do. Eleanor couldn't cross to the bed because she was trapped by unfinished business. But Maya could help her complete what death had interrupted. She could give Eleanor the closure she'd been seeking for a century. The next night would change everything. Maya woke up the next morning with a new sense of purpose. She knew what Eleanor needed, but she also knew there was more to discover. The letter from James had been sent 3 days after Eleanor's death, which meant there might be more correspondence, more pieces to this heartbreaking puzzle. She decided to visit Mrs. Patterson at the Historical Society again. This time, she brought copies of the letter and photos of the engagement ring. The elderly librarian's eyes lit up when she saw them. Oh my goodness, you found them. Your great-aunt mentioned these items to me years ago, but I'd never seen them. Mrs. Patterson carefully examined the letter. This explains so much about the stories people tell about your house. What kind of stories? Maya asked, settling into a chair beside the librarian's desk. Well, over the years, several residents have reported seeing a young woman in white. But unlike typical ghost stories, she never seemed frightening. People described her as sad, searching for something. One family in the 1960s said she would appear and point at their bedroom furniture, as if looking for something specific. Maya nodded, thinking of Eleanor's desperate attempts to reach the bed. Mrs. Patterson, do you know what happened to James Mitchell after Eleanor died? The librarian's expression grew thoughtful. That's an interesting question. Let me check. Our records. She disappeared into the back room and returned with another folder. Here we are. James Mitchell, born 1899, studied medicine in Boston. He did recover from the flu. But she paused, reading through the documents. Oh dear, this is quite tragic. He died in France in 1924, just a year after Eleanor passed away. Maya's heart sank. How did he die? He joined the medical corps and went to Europe to help with post-war relief efforts. According to this obituary, he was killed in an accident while treating patients in a field hospital. He was only 25. Maya stared at the obituary, feeling the weight of the tragedy. Eleanor had been waiting for a reunion that could never happen. Both young lovers had died within a year of each other, their dreams of marriage and a life together cut short by circumstances beyond their control. there's something else. Mrs. Patterson continued, pulling out a small newspaper clipping. This is from James's hometown newspaper. It mentions that he never got over Eleanor's death. His friends said he carried her photograph everywhere and spoke of her constantly. He apparently told people that he would find her again, even if it took forever. Maya felt tears building in her eyes. This wasn't just a ghost story anymore. It was a love story that had been interrupted by death, leaving two souls separated by the veil between worlds. That evening, Maya prepared for Eleanor's visit differently. She lit a small candle on her nightstand and placed fresh flowers next to James's letter. She also brought down an old record player from the attic, along with some 1920s music her great-aunt had collected. When Eleanor appeared at 3:17 a.m., Maya was ready with a plan. "Hello, Eleanor," Maya said softly. "I learned more about James today. I know you've been waiting for him, but I need to tell you something important." Eleanor moved closer to the invisible barrier, her eyes fixed on Maya's face. There was something different about her tonight. She seemed more solid, more present, as if Maya's acknowledgement of her story had given her strength. "James loved you more than anything," Maya continued, holding up the letter. "But Eleanor, he's not coming back. He died in 1924, just a year after you. He tried to live without you, but his heart was broken. He went to France to help people, and he died there thinking of you." Eleanor's form flickered, and Maya could see the pain in her translucent features. But she also saw something else, relief. For the first time in 100 years, Eleanor knew the truth about what had happened to her beloved James. Maya stood up slowly and approached the foot of the bed. "I think I understand now why you can't cross to the bed. You died there, and you've been trapped by not knowing what happened to James. But Eleanor, he never forgot you. He carried your photograph with him everywhere." Eleanor reached out toward Maya, her fingers pressing against the invisible barrier that had held her back for so long. Maya could feel the cold emanating from Eleanor's presence, but it wasn't frightening. It was sad and desperate and full of longing. "I found something else," Maya said, pulling out a small item she'd discovered in her great-aunt's papers. It was a photograph of James in his medical uniform, taken just before he left for France. On the back, someone had written, "For my beloved Eleanor, until we meet again in heaven." Eleanor's eyes widened when she saw the photograph. She pressed both hands against the barrier, tears streaming down her face, for the first time since Maya had been seeing her. Eleanor looked directly at the bed instead of at Maya. Maya suddenly understood Eleanor wasn't trying to reach Maya at all. She was trying to reach the bed where she had died, the place where she had taken her last breath hoping James would come to her. The bed represented her final moments, her last earthly connection to the love she'd lost. "He's waiting for you, Eleanor," Maya said gently. "Not here in this house, but somewhere else, somewhere better. You don't have to stay trapped here anymore." Eleanor looked back at Maya with an expression of such gratitude that it took Maya's breath away. But she still couldn't cross the barrier. There was one more thing Maya needed to do. Maya picked up the engagement ring from the nightstand. "This belongs to you," she said, holding it up so Eleanor could see it clearly. "James gave this to you as a promise. He kept that promise, even after death. He loved you until his last breath." Eleanor's form began to shimmer more brightly, as if Maya's words were feeding some inner light. She reached out again, this time not toward the bed, but toward the ring in Maya's hand. "I wish I could give this to you directly," Maya said, "but I think you need to take it yourself. You need to choose to let go of this place and find James." Eleanor nodded slowly, understanding passing between them. She had been waiting for someone to help her understand that James's love was real, that his absence wasn't abandonment but tragedy. Now she knew the truth, and she could make the choice to move on. Maya placed the ring on the bed, right at the foot where Eleanor always stopped. "It's yours, Eleanor. Take it and go to James. He's been waiting for you." Eleanor stared at the ring, then at Maya, then back at the ring. For the first time in 100 years, she had a choice to make. She could keep haunting this house, trapped by incomplete knowledge, or she could trust that love was stronger than death and take the step that would free her. The moment of truth had arrived. Eleanor stared at the ring lying on the bed for what felt like hours. Maya held her breath, watching as the ghost wrestled with a decision that would change everything. The room was completely silent except for the soft ticking of the old clock on the wall. Then, slowly, Eleanor began to move forward. For the first time since Maya had been seeing her, Eleanor's foot crossed the invisible line at the foot of the bed. Maya gasped as she watched Eleanor take another step, then another, moving across the barrier that had held her captive for a century. Eleanor's form became more solid as she approached the ring. The moonlight seemed to bend around her, making her white nightgown glow with an inner light. She was no longer the sad, desperate figure Maya had grown used to seeing. She looked peaceful, almost radiant. With trembling hands, Eleanor reached down and picked up the engagement ring. The moment her fingers touched the metal, a warm light filled the room. Maya watched in amazement as Eleanor slipped the ring onto her finger, where it belonged. "Thank you," Eleanor whispered, her voice barely audible but crystal clear. "They were the first words Maya had heard her speak." Eleanor turned to face Maya, and for a moment, they looked at each other across the impossible distance between the living and the dead. Eleanor's face was filled with gratitude and something else. Happiness, pure, genuine happiness. "I can see him now," Eleanor said, her voice growing stronger. "He's here. He's been waiting for me all along." Maya looked around the room, but she saw nothing except Eleanor's glowing form. Yet she could feel something changing in the atmosphere. The heavy sadness that had pressed down on the house for so long was lifting, replaced by something warm and peaceful. Eleanor began to fade, but not in the way she usually disappeared. This time, she was dissolving into points of light, like stars scattered across the bedroom. The light grew brighter and brighter until Maya had to close her eyes against the brilliance. When she opened them again, Eleanor was gone. But Maya wasn't alone. For just a moment, Maya saw two figures standing together at the foot of the bed. Eleanor in her white nightgown, and beside her, a young man in a suit that looked like it was from the 1920s. James. They were holding hands, and both were smiling. The young man looked at Maya and nodded, a simple gesture of thanks. Then both figures faded away, leaving behind only a sense of completion and peace. Maya sat on the bed, tears streaming down her face. She had just witnessed something impossible, something beautiful, a love story that had been interrupted by death had finally found its happy ending, just not in the way anyone might have expected. The room felt different now. The oppressive atmosphere that had weighed on the house for decades was completely gone. Maya could almost hear the house itself sighing with relief, as if it had been waiting for Eleanor to find peace. Over the following days, Maya noticed changes throughout the house. Rooms that had felt cold and unwelcoming now seemed warm and bright. The strange creaking sounds that had kept her awake at night were gone. Even the old photographs on the walls seemed to smile more brightly. Maya decided to stay in the house permanently. She set up her graphic design business properly, turning the front room into a professional office. Clients began visiting regularly, and many commented on how peaceful and welcoming the house felt. She also began documenting Eleanor's story, adding her own experiences to her great aunt's journals. Maya felt it was important to preserve the truth about what had happened, not as a ghost story, but as a testament to the power of love and the importance of helping others find peace. 6 months later, Maya received a visit from Mrs. Patterson from the Historical Society. The elderly librarian had brought a box of items that had been donated to the society years ago. "I thought you might be interested in these," Mrs. Patterson said, opening the box. "They belong to James Mitchell's family. His sister donated them after she passed away last year." Inside the box were letters, photographs, and personal items that had belonged to James. Maya was amazed to find dozens of letters he had written to Eleanor but never sent, all expressing his love and his dreams for their future together. But the most touching discovery was a small diary James had kept during his final months in France. The last entry, written just days before his death, brought tears to Maya's eyes. "I dream of Eleanor every night. She appears to me in that white dress she loved so much, and she's always smiling. I know she's waiting for me somewhere beyond this world. When my time comes, I will go to her gladly. Our love is stronger than death itself." Maya realized that James had been as trapped as Eleanor, unable to move on because he knew she was waiting for him. Both spirits had been bound by their love, unable to find peace until they were reunited. That night, Maya placed James's diary on her nightstand next to Eleanor's ring, which had remained on the bed since that magical night. She had considered putting it away, but something told her to leave it there as a reminder of the love story that had finally found its ending. She never saw Eleanor or James again, but sometimes, on quiet evenings, Maya would hear the faint sound of music drifting through the house, not scary or mysterious, but joyful, like the music that might have played at a wedding that never happened, finally celebrating a love that had conquered death itself. Maya often thought about the note her great-aunt had left her. "She means no harm, dear. She's just looking for someone who understands." Her great-aunt had understood that Eleanor needed help, but she hadn't known how to provide it. It had taken Maya's fresh perspective and determination to finally solve the mystery. The house on Chestnut Street was no longer haunted. It was blessed. Maya lived there happily for many years, always feeling protected and loved. She never married, but she never felt lonely either. The house was full of the warmth that comes from knowing that true love had once lived there, and that it had finally found its way home. Sometimes, when Maya told the story to friends, they would ask if she missed Eleanor. Maya would smile and shake her head. She didn't miss Eleanor because Eleanor was finally where she belonged, in the arms of the man she loved, in a place where death could no longer separate them. The love story of Eleanor and James had ended not with tragedy, but with triumph, and Maya had been blessed to be part of that ending, to help the souls find the peace they had been seeking for so long. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever witnessed, and she carried that beauty with her for the rest of her life.